All right, 7 o'clock, so we'll call to order the Town of Farragut Visual Resources Review Board meeting for May 2022. So the first item we needed on our agenda is to approve the minutes for the April 2022 meeting. Any discussion from the board relative to the minutes? Any questions, comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve by Ms. Stode. We have a second.
I'll second.
Or a second by Alderman Pinchot.
Ready to sleep on that end of it.
I don't want a second to a meeting I wasn't here for.
Me either.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll move down to the ground mounted sign applications. Are you representing one of the items?
Yes, I'm Gary Hayes with Neon Service Company.
What-
It's fast pace.
The fast pace, okay?
Okay.
All right, and we've got Farragut Crossing here. So why don't we move down to Farragut Crossing first, then we'll hit fast pace and circle back up. That way we can let them get through their items. So let's start there with Farragut Crossing, the informational exit sign.
Okay, this is a request for a subdivision exit sign. They're allowed under the ordinance for informational purposes. People can put community news and events and notifications on them. They have to be located so they're not visible from the exterior of the subdivision, and so that people driving out can see them. So plan they have here is to put up a standard sign. It's the size we allow. It's the right area, right height, all of that. It's going to be a pretty basic sign. It's going to be black posts, a frame. It meets all our standards. It'll be a letterboard type. Now, it won't look exactly like this because, this is a little more ornamental, and they're proposing just 4x4 wood posts, painted black, that sort of thing. But basically, it'll be a changeable letterboard like this that they'll be able to, post different messages if there's like a HOA meeting or that sort of thing on it. Where they want to put it is actually somewhat internal to the subdivision. These are normally located right at the exit. They're usually located like behind the the entrance sign or in an area close by and facing outwards. But if you're familiar with this subdivision, everything or most everything north of here or the proposed location heading up towards Kingston Pike is actually commercial. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to put it up there. At that point, you're pretty much out of the subdivision. So they're proposing to put it there at the corner of Federal Boulevard and Farragut Crossing Drive. That's a detention basin lot that's controlled by the homeowners association. So we thought that it was clearly within the intent of the ordinance where they wanted to locate it. Just not typical. And they do have a landscaping plan. I had a couple of comments that I sent out in the memo. They got a copy of that memo as well, and they've already made the corrections that I had asked for. So here, they've noted that not only will it be 16 feet from the edge of the pavement, but it'll meet the minimum 5 foot from the property line. And also on the landscaping plan, they have further specified that the perennial plants will be flowering type, which is required in the ordinance, and they will not be an invasive species. So with that, we can recommend approval.
All right. To begin, I will let everyone know that I live in Farragut Crossing, so right down from where the sign is proposed. So wanted that to be fully disclosed. Are there any questions to staff from the board? Or any questions at all? Comments?
Sounds like they were well prepared.
looks like, it looks good. There's no comments or questions. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the sign.
All right, we got a motion by Ms. Stowe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I can't, who said second? All right, gotcha. Derek Rice said second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I will abstain, Bart, since I live there, but I think the motion carries.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, if we'll move down now to Fast Pace Healthcare, 13013 Kingston Pike.
Okay, this is for Fast Pace Healthcare. You actually reviewed a sign plan for this back in October and approved it. They have updated the look of the sign and the monument to better match the building up there. Originally, the building, the exterior facade was going to be colored differently, and there were going to be a few differences. So they had went ahead already and updated the look of the monument, and now they're also going to update the actual sign panel that's on it. There's already a sign installed out there on a black brick wall that matches the building, but I guess the company is changing its logo or changing the look of its signage. So they brought this back to get it re-permitted, both for the actual sign face, but also to reflect what they actually put on the ground out there, which is a different color sign than what was, well, a different color wall background than what was originally permitted. So here's what it looks like. Actually, that's on the, that's what the wall looks like right now out there on the site. They photoshopped the new look of the sign on it, but that's what it'll look like actually on the site. And that brick wall, in that color scheme's already out there. And you can see they're actually working on the landscaping there now.
Okay.
So the second one is the actual sign that will be there?
Well, the brick wall is already installed and looks just like that with
Okay.
that white trim cap. The sign face that's on the sign, if you drive home that way tonight, the sign face that's on there is a little different. The design, it's red like that with white lettering. It's just that, the logo and the printing of Fast-Paced Health is slightly different. So they came back and re-permitted or are in the process of re-permitting the change in the face. And, they also updated, the look of the monument itself, the brick monument wall, to match what they actually installed out there. It's a good looking sign if you drive past it even now.
It's very readable from the road. It's a
Yeah.
good sign.
Yeah. And, this is the same landscaping plan they had from the original sign, same site plan showing the setbacks are met and everything. So it meets all our standards, and we can recommend approval of it.
Okay, so really, they just changed the color of the brick to match the building?
Yeah, they
And
did
the
that.
signs.
Did that to match the building, and they had actually done that prior to this permit. But they are changing the actual sign face, so essentially they're refacing this sign. But as part of that, they're also updating the plan to reflect the actual color of the brick and the wall that they put out there to mount the sign on.
Yeah. Well, to me, it looks very legible and looks good.
We've got a picture of the wall sign later on in the staff report on wall signs that where you can see what the actual building looks like. So you see what.
Okay. All right, questions, comments for staff?
Is this like a walk-in, walk-out kind of clinic?
My understanding it is,
Okay.
it's just a walk-in clinic. I just work at the sign company and.
Okay.
They've done several of these. And
Yeah.
they changed their logo somewhere in the process. Corporate-wide is the reason they're changing this face. It's just a little bit difference in the graphics.
Well, if you didn't have that nice, red sign is nice. Because it pops and, it kind of draws your eye. Otherwise, you could easily not
Yeah, that's kind of a.
I mean, the place itself wouldn't, but the sign
Lot
pops.
of foliage in that area there,
Yeah,
but I like that myself.
okay. I like it.
Any other comments, questions?
Bart, does the landscaping currently meet the requirements, or are they finished?
The last time we were out there, they were putting some of the landscaping in. You know, they just have to have, 6 shrubs in that area, and, that's what they were calling for. The landscaping on the site's pretty extensive. We went out there and did a site review on it, and they had most of their landscaping in the last time we were out there, but they were still working around the sign area, so, but we'll check on that and make sure they get, all 6 of the shrubs in.
Is it open yet? Is it open?
I don't know if the business, is it?
It is?
Any other questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Did that? Was
I
that
did.
Randy? Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to repeat it that time, didn't I? All right, thank you very much.
That's okay.
We can go back up to Hope Bridge now.
Okay, this is a tenant panel request for Hope Bridge. It's replacing or the renaming of a business that's already out there. So it's a very visible tenant panel that they're putting on the sign. See, it appears to meet all of our requirements, and we can recommend approval.
Any comments, questions for staff?
What do they do?
It looks good.
Yeah.
I think it's more
Yeah.
visible than the other 3.
Yeah, it's basically autism in motion. Is a, yeah. So it's,
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll motion for approval.
Motion by Mr. Marlowe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we're at Car Fix, 150 North Campbell Station Road. I think a location that's been there for a while and keeps changing names.
so this is a reface of an existing monument sign. It was A1 Auto, now it's going to be another auto repair type shop, Car Fix. It's going on the existing base. Again, I had a couple of comments on this that were in the staff memo, but they got a copy and they've already made the corrections as well. So the existing sign base there is a little shy of our required 2-foot minimum, but it is an existing base, so it's at 1.6 feet instead of a full 2, but that's okay. And they've also updated the drawing there to show that their planning will be at least the required 50 square feet around the sign. So the comments I had put in the staff memo have already been addressed, and we can recommend approval of it.
All right, well, it did appear to be very legible. Do we have any questions or comments?
Like the Black-Eyed Susans, because you don't see those a lot around signs and things. I think that's a nice touch.
Yeah, I think they use those, or this sign company used those on another sign recently.
Yeah, I think they're pretty.
The bank.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
A motion by Mr. Armstrong. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Wright. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so on the landscape plan, they asked for that to be postponed, so I guess we don't really need to do anything with that
No,
agenda item, or?
That'll come back at at the next meeting. They're going to resubmit. They, had some changes and some updates to do that plan. It's a very extensive plan. It covers a big chunk of the Biddle Farm, development. It'll cover all the multifamily area, plus some of the streetscaping there, along a couple of the public roads that are going in, and there's going to be an area across from there that's going to have a public restroom area, and so it's a big landscaping plan. So we met with them, I think it was last week, and they're going to make some revisions to it, and it was just a lot of revisions to make before this meeting. So
Okay,
we'll just put it on the June agenda.
okay. All right, we'll then move forward to the other business, and you have a staff report on the wall signs approved over the past month.
Yeah, this is something that you all have asked for in the past, and Holly was here staffing the last meeting, and she relayed to me that you all wanted to see these now, month to month. I guess it's something that had been done in the past, but not in a number of years, so we'll start doing it on a regular basis. I don't know if you'd prefer to have them at the end or the beginning. I put it at the end in part, or near the end in part, because we're going to have a discussion about wall signs. And also, I just thought from the standpoint of, getting people here that had agenda items to get them through quicker. In the future, I don't know if you'd rather have it early in the agenda or at the end of the agenda, but.
I think your logic makes sense, putting it at the end, because if there's an applicant in the crowd, we'd rather go to that first anyway, so
Okay.
makes sense to me, unless anybody else thinks different.
Okay. So, in the past month or so, the town's issued a number of wall sign permits. We're working on several others, but the ones that have actually been permitted or had been permitted by late last week when we sent the packet out were Carfix. So you can see, how their ground signs can actually match the permitted wall sign. I guess one advantage to putting them at the front would be if we had ground sign applications, you could see what the building looks like in advance, but, we can always bounce around in the PowerPoint if necessary. Here's Fast Pace Health, so you can see what the building looks like there. It's a lot of white and black brick, so you can see why they made the changes to their brick monument. This is Stretch Fusion. It's a small sign. It's just plastic letters mounted on the wall over at Village Green Shopping Center. I'm not going to try to pronounce that because I'll mess it up. But yeah,
Where's that located?
Blockbuster.
Where?
Oh, Blockbuster.
The whole blockbuster.
yeah.
That's how we all still know it.
We do.
Well, that's the space
The
that
dog walker
Patrios is in, right?
is next to it.
Yeah, Portrio's is in there, they are expanding, so they've moved their Portrio sign over, and then approved that, that will be the ice cream.
Okay.
And then Ageless, and that's out along Parkside.
That was Snooty before.
Is that their sign?
Yeah.
What was this before?
It was Snooty.
My email's lovesnooty.com.
Yeah, they still, the company is still Snooty, they just
Oh.
changed the.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a sign we permitted probably 3, maybe 4 years ago. The Snooty sign. Yeah.
And then that one.
Yeah. So they change quickly. So
Across from Zaxby's.
Across what?
Across the street from Zaxby's.
I thought the Snooty sign was very easy to read. I don't find this one easy to
It's
read.
actually darker now, so the actual sign is a lot easier to see.
Okay.
And those are the only signs that have been permitted since the last meeting. Like I said, there are several that are in process. There's a Complete Suites over in the Renaissance Center. There's Beauty and the Beard. It's going in Village Green. And then there's one potential one for ProSource at the same development that has Sherwin-Williams paint in that area. So
Will you add those to next month's?
if they get approved.
Yeah.
If they get approved.
I think it's good. I'm glad that we started doing this. I think it's nice to see what you all are approving. And like Marty said, if there's an issue going down the, going forward, we have something to look back and say, well, this is what we did earlier, and I feel more comfortable with it, especially with ground signs.
That's it for the approved signs for the.
So then the last item, I guess, the potential amendments and the wall signs review.
This is a discussion that we had scheduled for the last meeting, but I guess y'all decided to defer it to this meeting so I could be here. Also have Holly here, who, as you know, really works on permitting the vast majority of the wall signs we have in the town now. So I think she has a good perspective on the process and what goes into the wall sign applications and permitting, and then all the follow-up work on them. So in your memo there, I put together sort of staff's thoughts on it. We do have some concerns about running the wall signs through the VRB. Just in terms of the number of issues we deal with wall signs, and also the number of wall signs we see. We see a lot more turnover in wall signs than we do ground signs. Now, that's not counting in terms of tenant panels. We do see a fair number of tenant panels, but even with tenant panels included, we do more wall signs than we do tenant panels and ground signs. And we have to spend a lot of time working, oftentimes with the sign company, the owner of the business, and oftentimes now even the owner of the shopping center that they're going into, because we're trying to get that compatibility and consistency throughout the center. And in fact, today we were having a meeting with a representative from the Village Green Shopping Center to sort of get a sense on where they wanted to go with signage, because it's a hodgepodge in there. And as we're having business turnover, we'd like to get some more consistency. So we're a little concerned, I guess, about some of the time delay that could get put into the system if we have all the wall signs running through the VRB. I understand, some of the members' thoughts about the fact that, they do have a lot of impact on the community, the wall signs do, and, just trying to think about how to make it work is really where we started to have some concerns about doing that. But I mean, clearly, if the VRB wants to see him and wants to make that recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, we can. Ultimately, it would be up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to change the ordinance. But that's and we can discuss the process. I think a lot of the holdups would be in the compatibility and the consistency within the shopping center. Would create a lot of issues. We have a lot of back and forth with the business applicant and with the owner, and also with the sign company. I don't know whether, some of the sign companies may not always, fully read our ordinance and understand that, or it may be that they do, and it's just easier, for us to tell their client no than it is for them to tell their client no. But we have a lot of signs turned in that, clearly can't be permitted, and then we have to, go back and forth with the business owner and with the sign company and try to get something that would be permittable. And, we thought about, well, is it something we could bring to the VRB and get some input on the basic design and then work out all the details, or vice versa, work out all the details and then bring it to the VRB. Well, if we work out all the details and bring it to the VRB, you know, all that's already been done, and it becomes either a rubber stamp, or if you don't like it at that point, then all that work that the sign company and the applicant and staff has done, you know, is essentially wasted time. And if they bring in a design and you love the design, but then when we start working with them on compatibility issues or sizing, you know, sizing in particular, you know, a sign that might look good on paper at one size, and they realize that, oh, you know, it's only allowed to be 30 square feet and not the 45 they proposed, they shrink it down. Now, it may not be as readable, it may not be as effective for them. So, you know, those are some of the things we talked about at the staff level in the office as to, like, how to make that work, and we just kind of kept tripping over the process as to, you know, what would be the best way. So, yeah, you know, have any questions for Holly or myself on exactly how the process works or how much time is spent doing that sort of thing?
I like the idea that you're giving us the ones that have been approved.
Yeah.
I'd like, personally, this is me, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the board, but I'd like to know, when you do that, you say, well, this one was real easy, you know, no problem. Here's the one we had difficulty with, and these were the issues that we had to deal with, even after you approved it. But so that not only that you're just showing us what you approved, but what kind of issues have you run into? Just a couple bullet points. But I think that might help me, or maybe you all, say, okay, maybe we should be more involved with certain ones, or maybe after a couple meetings, say, no, this is all working fine, let's just let them continue to do it and just give us the update like you've said. But I guess I would like a little bit more information as to what you're struggling with or what kind of issues you're having. And does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it makes sense what you're saying. I was sort of thinking along the same lines. Is this is the first meeting where we've been able to see the wall-mounted signs that were approved over the last month. Being able to see those for a couple of months or 3 or whatever it is, along with the information you're talking about, then it gives us a better understanding of really what we think we should do, you know, because right now we don't know. We haven't seen these before.
Exactly.
So I think I can agree with that. Others?
A hearty yes to both comments. No, I think that's more information and really brings it full circle to what we're doing here from our perspective. Seems like that could be a little incomplete up to this point, but filling in some of those gaps and spaces, I think would be helpful. More information is better. Get a little more input or involvement in the process would be very good. So I agree with those comments.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up the business not getting their sign, and I think you all are doing a good job, apparently have for some time now. But I think this board needs to have a little better information as to what transpired with that decision. And yeah, just a few bullet points, we don't need to get into a lengthy discussion. You say, yeah, we had a problem with this one, and here's what the problem was. Okay, so that kind of gives us an idea. Do we want to get involved with that, or just leave it up to you? Or maybe we should be involved with certain parts of it.
Not to cut you off, Autumn, sorry.
That's right.
Yeah, I think my biggest, and I expressed this last time we talked about this, I think mine was just some sizing and some things. When you try to put a sign on the front of a building and you squeeze every single inch out of that, the sign becomes too big. Okay, the fast-paced sign we saw tonight was edge to edge. It's uncomfortable. The sign in front of their building was edge to edge. If you just bring it in a little bit, it's more aesthetically pleasing. Now, I don't want to hold up anything, and I think that's the biggest thing we're looking at. I also feel like, and you guys can agree or disagree, that as a board, we should be ruling on the bigger, more important, more visible things. Whereas I don't feel like the banner signage, I don't feel like we should be that should be something you guys as a staff should be able to knock those out. I don't think that's, I'm not saying that's a waste of our time,
You
but.
mean a tenant panel?
Tenant panels, sorry.
Well, just
Tenant
to,
panels.
I was going to say this earlier. It seems like they're already being done, because to that point right there, when they come before us like tonight, Bart even commented that staff's done this and does a great job of approving it. It's already done. It was just sort of a check the box, and I'm not asking for more work and more time.
No, I'm not either.
But at the same time, you make a good point in that maybe some of the bigger items, more visible, I think would it seems to be more appropriate for this group, because again, it's almost like it should be flipped, but because what we did tonight, it was already done, and they did a great job, and it was.
Yeah, I think on the ones tonight, and
One
this is
example.
probably common on a lot of them, is
Yeah.
when they're just refacing an existing monument, that tends to be, very cookie cutter. Is it the right size? Is it the right height? Everything's already in place. Whereas when someone's putting in a new monument sign, then this board has a lot more input on, does the structure of the sign look good with the building? Does it fit on the site? Is the landscaping they're putting in, adequate and good? Or are there suggestions to maybe, move something around so it doesn't block, the vision of the sign as it grows up? Really, some of the reface issues are almost as simple as tenant panels. They're just, it's the exact same sign, they're just putting a new plastic panel in the same frame.
And I'm not saying I have
everything
an
else is
answer
the
for what
same.
we just said, because I
Yeah.
know timing is very important. I get it.
One of the things we thought about, after your comment last time on the sign that you thought was too big on a
The
building.
dentistry
and-
sign across
yeah,
from
and,
Ingles, yeah.
Was that,
Knox Valley.
the more sensible
Knox
way,
Valley,
if this board does eventually want to start reviewing wall signs, would be to have the input on the design first, and then work out the specs, because, this board wouldn't have any control over the sizing. The ordinance says that they get 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of building frontage. And most all of them max that out. And so, aside from how does the sign look, if they want to put up 30 square feet and they're allowed 30 square feet, there's nothing we can really do to deny that.
Gotcha.
In terms of where a lot of the back and forth goes, that, Holly deals with, with the applicants and the sign companies, is, the initial design they turn in is totally in left field from every other sign on the building, and it doesn't meet our compatibility issues. Or, they turn in a simple cabinet sign because their client's trying to save money, and everything else on the building is channel letters. And we have to say, no, you can't do that. Or, they have a face lit sign and everything on the building is reverse lit. And so it's getting those issues worked out. Really, the sizing is, you've got 35 foot of frontage on that on your lease space in the strip mall, and you can have 35 square feet of area in the sign. And most of it is them then just trying to fit as much message as they want
Right.
into that 35 square feet. And, where a lot of it is in that, how does it fit with everything else in the development? How does it look on the building? Is it, and we have a lot now that want, they'll be in a business where everything is white, white lit channel letters. But, they want pink ones, and we're like, well, you can't have pink because it's not going to fit. But, then the compromise is they can put a logo in that's colored, that's next to it. So,
Yeah.
it's that back and forth. So from a design standpoint, I think if you did ever want to, look at them and propose that to the town board, it would probably make more sense to have the design come in on the front end, see how you felt about it, and then work out the nuts and bolts of how it works. But even there, like I said, we thought about that and worked through it, and what might look good if they just came in and presented just a general sketch of their design. Once they started trying to fit it and work out some of those other parameters, it might not work, so, they might be back to the drawing board. And we also felt like if you look there in my memo, the number of these that come in, we'd probably have to move the deadline for the VRB to 3 or 4 weeks in advance of the meeting, because, not only do we see a lot more wall signs, the agendas would be a lot bigger to get the packets out, the memo and everything to you.
Yeah.
But, there would be that, but, it's not a nice steady number of, gee, we see 5 of these a month, I mean, on average, we see X number a month, but, they can range from here to here, so some months would be slammed and other months would be shorter, so we'd probably have to stretch that out in terms of submittal. So, people would be waiting at least a month oftentimes for a wall sign, whereas in-house, we can get them turned around in a week oftentimes.
One thing I wanted to add to Derek's comment, I think he's very correct in that it seems we receive a lot of signs before us today and in recent meetings that are pretty easy to approve. And I don't know if that's because sign companies are more willing to work with us, if they understand the regulations more. But going back in time, I can remember a number of signs that made it through staff, came to us, and my impression is that the sign company may have said to staff, well, we want to see what the board says, because it came to us with a whole lot of subject tos, or you need to look at this, or this may not be right, and we had a lot more to work our way through than we seem to have recently. And I don't want to attribute that to, but it does seem that we have a little bit easier time now than we have had in the past because the signs come in, they meet the regulation. And then the second comment to that is with our inability to regulate any of the content of the sign, and going way back, some of that was a point of conversation during these meetings was what's actually on the sign, but that is something that's not even on the table for us really to review anymore. So I just wanted to add that it does seem like there's been a change in the way the signs come to us now. They're just more complete. They're ready for an easier approval than many that I've seen in the past.
Well, if we weren't having this discussion, we could have probably had this whole meeting in what?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Right.
And I honestly, and I'm just speaking honestly, I don't, they got jobs, I don't have jobs, but I have things I need to do. And, I don't want to come in here and sit 20 minutes just to see something that's already approved. I mean, what are you going to do if we don't like it? It's already approved.
Yeah.
So I would think, and there have been times in the past when we've really discussed complex signs, I mean, the way it was written, colors, everything, and recommendations were made from this board, which were taken back to the sign people, and they liked it and ended up using it. So there's some good information that comes out of here. Plus, I think it's a good backup for you. That way you don't have to hear the little, well, this certain group of people, the only people that looked at this, and they make the decision. So it gives you a backup too, to say, well, we've had a public board, we got no dog in any fight that has said this about it, and so I don't particularly think we need to see the ones that are already approved. I mean, you can show us these are the approved signs, but if there's nothing to talk about or do about it, then I would rather have the more complex ones.
Is there a way to, if we are supposed to, per bylaws or ordinances, whatever, is there a way to, when you send out on Friday, whatever day that is, for the tenant panel, for the ones that are just replace, scratch off, scratch on, that are already approved, they're already in, there's no real discussion to have, is that something we could comment on or have a chance to by email, and then come in and if there's no comments and we've approved all those, we're moving on to the complex one. Maybe there's just one that week, or I don't know, maybe there's none that week, but just to cut down, I just had that thought is if there's a way to streamline that process to where we're not just saying yes to something that's already essentially been said yes to.
I mean, some planning commissions will, and other boards, will have like a consent agenda, and they'll just list a bunch of things on the front end, and one motion, will approve, 4 tenant panels instead of having to have a motion on each one. We could just show what each one looks like on the agenda, but, and you can amend the ordinance so the tenant panels don't even come to the board, but that's a discussion you had in the past too, as to, the whole idea of whether they're visible and we do oftentimes, question the visibility and the board weighs in on whether they think that they're visible or not. The wall signs, anytime we have one where we can't get agreement with the sign company or the applicant, we do bring it to y'all for input. And that does help because it takes the burden off us. It's not just staff weighing in on it. I think, going to your comment, Chairman, that I think recently a lot of the ground signs have been a little simpler because a lot of them have been refacing on existing monuments. So you haven't been looking at the monuments or the landscaping, or when that, landscaping was going in, they were just reestablishing landscaping that had previously been there, as opposed to a whole new business, a whole new monument going in. A fast pace is an exception of that, but you did most of the review work on fast pace back in October. This one was just, showing you what they did to change the brick color, and, essentially was a reface project. I think a lot of the complexity we've been dealing with, and not so much complexity, but just working things through our code has been more on the wall sign aspect of things, and Holly's been dealing with a lot of that, so she can kind of, brief you if you want on some of the issues she sees and, repetitively that we deal with on wall signs. I think probably the last pretty, the last few pretty ornate signs that y'all weighed in on were like subdivision entrance signs. There've been a few pretty elaborate subdivision entrance signs, but the developer's doing a lot of the subdivisions right now. The past few of those, they hired really good designers, and those designers did a great job with the sign. They're totally familiar with our regulations, and their landscaping was so far and above what the standards were that, there's not much more for staff to say than, recommend approval. That,
I think that's my point.
That
There are a lot of good sign companies now that really understand what to do, and we're seeing that.
I've got a comment here. Speaking as a board meeting alderman member, these committees and boards need to, they need to show their importance and make sure that we're representing the needs of the town. And in 2 terms, of the 8 years I've been on the board, we have dissolved some committees because they just weren't active enough or efficient. And I'm not saying we need to do that here, but we need to feel like we're really doing something for the town, representing the town in a way that, we're helping. And at times I don't feel that myself since I've been on here. I feel like we're rubber stamping some things, as you said. I'm going to make a recommendation that maybe, Marty, as chairman, you sit down with Bart, and Holly, and maybe Mark, and see if you can come up with what should this board be doing to show its importance and its relevance before we go any further, making any changes. I mean, let's just not say, let's start showing us all the ground signs, but we need to talk through. Maybe there's no need for this board anymore. If they're going to do it all and we just rubber stamp it, then we're just here for 15, 20 minutes and it doesn't pay off. But I think there is relevance here. I think we should have a board, but I think we need to rethink the process, and maybe you as chair could sit down instead of all of us trying to do it. or maybe you pick somebody to go with you, and maybe two, you sit down, whatever you think would be best. But I think there has to be a meeting between you and staff as to how we should go forward. What do you think of that? What's your thoughts on that?
Fair enough. I mean, I think that it does warrant additional conversation and determination of what we really need to be doing. One of the things we didn't have tonight was a landscape plan, and those are more complex, take more time. And had we had that one tonight, we may still be talking about it.
You're right.
Instead
It's
of
a
this
big
right now,
project.
because of the complexity of
Big
it.
one, but even there, and maybe it's a combination of what the board should be doing, but maybe even we can think about process change. I just don't I don't want to slow up applicants any more than
understand.
need be.
Understood.
Mhm.
Agree.
But
I've been there.
but-
That's not fun. Yeah.
But honestly, we try to get everything nailed down and ready for you to approve. I mean,
Right.
Holly does that, I
Yeah.
do that. When we're reviewing landscape plans, we're reviewing, we'll call the designer in and we'll have a meeting with him at the staff level, him or her, and go over a lot of things to sort of get the plan so that by the time it's coming to y'all, it's basically ready for approval. Unless you identify a problem that maybe we missed, which does happen. I mean, there've been plenty of times y'all have caught things that, the staff missed, or unless there's something that you just, really, really don't care for as a group and have an idea of how it could be changed or improved. We do spend a lot of time in the intervening period, going back and forth with the applicants and trying to get things worked out. If I see a sign, that I know, the board's going to look at, even a tenant panel, and it's just not going to be readable. I mean, I send a staff review comment back to them and says, hey, I don't think the board's going to approve this. Y'all might want to, at least come up with an alternative design, that, to present to them, because I'm not sure they're going to approve the one that you're presenting. And, sometimes they just turn in a whole new one and you never see the original because they're just like, yeah, you're right, that's fine. And then on some occasions, they want you to look at both and make a judgment call as to which one you think is better. I think you may have done that on last agendas. Yeah, the ones out there at the Starbucks Center for
Right.
Yeah,
That's
for
right.
Oakmont Station.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, they didn't turn in two on their own. They turned in two because we went ahead and flagged it and got with them and said, this is probably going to be a problem. You might want to have a backup plan in place. So, and same as with ground signs and the landscape plans. We actively try to get them ready for your approval. And so a lot of times, a lot of the code compliant issues have already been worked out. Some of the design things might still be hanging, although, like you say, we don't seem to have as much input on the design in terms of the, message and that sort of thing anymore. But in terms of, setbacks, and if someone's proposing a plant that, we think is going to be a problem or it's invasive, we're already trying to get that fixed. In fact, I'm typically trying to get them fixed before I even send out the packet, so I can send you something clean to look at, so that, if we did wall signs, it would be the same thing. Holly would be trying to get everything fixed, essentially, so that by the time it got to you, it was largely approvable. The alternative to that process would be to try to bring you more design sketches, and then, if you were happy with the design, then try to work with the applicants to hammer out the nuts and bolts of code compliance.
It seems to me like, though, if you've already worked that hard to fix it, and you bring it to us fixed, how are we of any value to you at that
Well,
point?
maybe that's what Ron's asking.
You gotta be relevant. It's got to be relevant.
It does help on some. I mean, there have been many times where, you know, I've asked them to change something, or I've asked them to bring in alternatives, because, you know, I didn't want it to just be my opinion. You know, I'm one staff person, you know, I don't want to be the all-seeing arbiter of, you know, what signs look like in Farragut. But, you know,
Well, of everybody in this room, Marty's got the most experience. What, 14 years, whatever it is?
15, yeah.
15 years. So, I mean, you know, I think if you sat down with staff and said, here's what we have done in the past, I know things have changed, let's talk through this. What should be brought to the board? What doesn't need to be brought to the board? And go from there. Britt? Yes, sir.
I mean, even during that time, there's been plenty of staff changes too, which I think is why, I mean, even in my time, the staff has changed. And I think part of that is why just the information, how we get the information, how thorough you all are in doing that. I mean, I think it's just different how it's done. Even the processes probably on the staff side that you all go through is different in that staff change. So, I mean, I think that's why it's different for us, is
Yeah.
just how we receive it. So it seems easier, cleaner. I think the same issues come up probably. They would have come up anyway. Just some of them are dealt with. But yeah, I mean, I do think I think there's just different issues probably that we could start looking at. Just are we thinking that, or have we just been kind of going with what we've always?
Curious, how many years have you been on the board?
7? Is that right? 8?
And-
7?
and-
8?
Sounds about right.
even in that period of time, there's been a lot of change.
Well,
I
I've
mean,
been
in-
I'm on an
you know,
odd schedule, so I think
Yeah,
8.
I've been the
Yeah,
second
maybe.
longest, I think.
You know, you were here when I started, and I've been with the town 5 years now. So it'll be 5 years next month, end of next month.
I think I've been on here 10, because this was the first board I was
Maybe I'm on
on
9.
when I started.
Or 7, I think.
So-
Sounds about right.
But,
8 years sounds
you know,
about
I think one thing that, you know, just in this conversation that comes to my mind that has changed a little bit is, everything's electronic now.
That's true.
A lot of the landscape plans, you know, they were all hand-drawn, or even if they were being done on the computer, we were getting paper copies. And so, a lot of times, everything would be hashed out before we would ask them to make the changes, you know. Now, you know, we can send an email or pick up the phone, and, you know, the next day, we're getting revised plans, so I can turn around and give you revised plans in the packet that have already been resolved, you know,
Well, maybe,
fixed. And the same with the signs, you know, we call up, I mean, literally, I sent out the staff memo that you all get to the applicants, you know, Friday, late morning, I think I emailed it all to you, and 2 of the applicants emailed me back, edited, you know, drawings and pictures to address even the few comments I had left. So, I mean, you know, it was done that quick.
Right,
So
well,
maybe
you-
that's part of it too, is that, you know, the turnaround time on them making revisions, and I think from a staff perspective, you know, we're more apt, or at least I'm more apt, I don't know how Holly feels, but, you know, I'm more apt to, you know, pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, can you make these by Thursday? So I can get a clean copy in the board's packet, because I know how quick they can turn it around. It's not like I'm asking them to sit down and redraw and reprint and have someone drop off paper copies to the town board when I don't even know if you're gonna approve it in the long run anyway. You know, now I can get those things worked out quicker and get them in your hands, you know, in an effort to make it approvable at the meeting. So,
let me ask you this question. In the area of community development, is there something, other area that this board could be involved in other than just signs and landscaping? I'm just throwing this out as a, you know, what might there be that we could add to our responsibilities and review? Maybe there isn't anything. I'm just saying, it's-
yeah, I mean.
maybe brainstorm, is there something else?
We could talk about that. I mean, that, you know, the one that comes most to mind, but again, it's interwoven with the planning commission site plan review, is the architectural design standards. But, you know, but that's that's a pretty complex, set of, review criteria, and it's interwoven with the site planning process, because, they're trying to design a building and a site typically at the same time, but.
Well, how about lighting? There seems to be a lot of issues around lighting right now.
Yeah, we typically run that through the planning commission, but again,
Well,
that's something that.
Something that I think maybe Marty could sit down and brainstorm with you all, and is there something else that could be added to our responsibilities that would be relevant?
I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think you are too. But I think you're doing such a good job
They
that
don't need us.
maybe, we aren't as much of an asset anymore, and nobody wants a 2-hour meeting, 3-hour meeting,
No.
believe me. Even I'm a retired person,
No.
and I don't want a 3-hour meeting. But,
All opposed?
but,
No.
maybe some of these things,
And there could be things like, unless it's, it may be a situation too where unless it's a truly new ground sign going in, like the whole sign's going in the ground, everything, or subdivision sign or a landscaping plan, that you might not need to meet every month,
That's true.
You might not need to meet for 3 tenant panels and a simple ground sign reface, and save your meetings for, there's plenty of boards that don't meet every month. The Board of Zoning Appeals, for instance, they only meet on demand when they have variance requests and things like that. They may meet 3 times a year.
I was going to ask about on demand, if there was, almost like that email that I suggested before, if when you're prepared to send that out, if there's nothing there that requires, then is that a month that's passed?
We would probably still want to have a set meeting date, if you went in that
Yeah.
direction. And then, if there's, nothing, that the board needs to weigh in on, there just wouldn't be a meeting that month.
Right.
But that would take ordinance changes too, because the way the ordinance reads right now is all ground signs have to be reviewed by the VRB.
Right.
So, and that includes refacing and tenant panels and that sort of thing. By the code, they have to come here. So we would have to make a change if you only wanted to say hypothetically see, new monuments, truly new signs, not reface, make a distinction between refacing and putting a new structure on the ground. Or, only reviewing landscaping plans or that sort of thing. That would all be changes to the code.
I don't think we know what we want to do. That's why Marty needs to meet with you all, and you all decide what we need to do, because I think we kind of don't know. at this point.
I think as we've talked this through, it does make sense for us to have a smaller meeting at some point, whether it's just me or if somebody else wants to be there, and us go through it and make some potential proposed recommendations to what this board would do carrying on. And if it requires what you're talking about with the ordinance changes, we can't just snap our fingers and that happen. So we need to go through a process. And in the meantime, I think what we've done tonight, I still do want to see personally the approved wall signs, and as Ron said, maybe a couple of bullet points, because as we go through that process, it's going to help us define what that ordinance change might be
Good point.
in the future.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, and we can just start doing that, because I know Holly, again, she's dealing with most of the wall signs, and they, I think she has a good sense of generally what all the hangups are that we deal with, but, even keeping track of them probably would help, just so we could narrow down if there are, certain sticking points on there. I know, we've started to meet with the Biddle group on their overall signage plans, and that, both from a ground sign standpoint, but also what they're gonna want their signs to look like throughout the development. And that's gonna be a big project, that's something that, honestly would be good to have the board's input on, at least from a, even if you're not acting on it, just run it through you, just to get, to get additional input on what their overall concept is for signage in that area.
I think the other thing we got to realize is when Marty gets elected, alderman,
Still
he
an
may
if,
not
but-
be on the board anymore. Now, he could be on as a liaison like I am, but, he won't be chairman if that were the case. So I think we need your input now, because come August, you might not be on it.
Things may change, right. Well, this has been a great discussion on that tonight. Is there any other comments, questions on that topic tonight?
Side topic, just a little issue. Bart, can you, or the Mexican ice cream shop, do you know, this is kind of funny. It's actually one of my customers, insurance customers, and they haven't told us they do that. They don't communicate very well. When are they moving in? Do you know?
I mean, they're already in there.
Good. I knew that. Yeah, I know. And they've got, yeah, yeah, okay. They did this last time they opened up another location. We sort of found out a few days later. That happens sometimes, though. They'll tell us a week or two later, oh, by the way, we moved in. So it's all right, but that's helpful to know. Thanks. So there.
Are you saying the ice cream is open, the ice cream
Yeah,
part?
it was already in
Yeah,
there.
it was already there.
Restaurants and expanding the ice cream.
Oh,
Very good, by the way. If you haven't been, it's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, unless they've remodeled, it was all already there. Ice cream was on one side, and,
Yeah, they're just kind of.
but
It was a different company, different. Well, before,
That was one of the signs, because you mentioned the bullet points, that's one of the signs that had a lot of work into it to get it to the right sign. Because what they wanted to do was they had a logo that was next to Portrillo's. It was a little cabinet sign that was probably like 18 inches square, that they wanted to just leave that up there for the ice cream side. Couldn't see that from anywhere, and so we ended up telling them they needed to have the channel letters to look like Portrillo's, and then the Balance Paws, which Balance Paws is a different building, but still it kind of needed to flow. So that was, it took a lot of.
That was a tough one,
Yeah.
We need to know that kind of stuff, I think,
Yeah.
before we make decisions of how we want to go forward with this.
And even though that sounds fairly simple, it's not, because there's just a lot of back and forth and trying to explain to multiple parties.
hit.
And then, they'll submit a revised proposal, and it still won't be right, and so there's a lot of round and round. I'm glad Holly has to deal with it, and I don't.
But that one was also one, I was a little bit hesitant because the letters were pink. And the Balance Paws letters are white, but then Portrillo's letters are red and yellow. So really, there are colors in there.
Yeah.
And it was still a similar style, so I ended up saying, yeah, that would be okay. So.
okay, that's
Yeah,
good information.
There's a certain amount of judgment that has to go into it. I mean, we can't write a perfect code, and we have to kind of deal with it as it is and be somewhat reasonable on
But
it.
this is good information, because we get asked by community members sometimes, why is the sign on the wall this color when the other sign's this color, and why is this and why is that? And before today, we would be only able to say, I don't know. Now we can at least say, well, here's what happened in that development. Here's why this ended up being that way. So it's good to have some information, because we do get asked, or at least I do, so. Anything else?
One quick note for next month. Coming to the end of the year, our student rep, will you be here next month, or is this your last?
Yes, I'll be here
Okay,
next.
so she'll be here next month. I will get out the list of applicants for the student representative next year. It's quite long.
Oh, really?
Really?
Tons of kids have applied.
Wow.
Good.
For all the boards. We have 7 applicants.
Wow.
So I'll get those applications out to you early. Probably, like next week, I'll try to get them to you so you can start looking through them and thinking about that. I'll check as to whether or not I guess you're free to select next month. It probably wouldn't be the end of the world if you went to the following month, but I'll try to get those out. I mean, this is a list of